What we're witnessing and sensing is an old paradigm of leadership, not just breaking down, but aging out. From this push to return to office culture, to leaders gripping tightly to an outdated hierarchy, trying to hold on to power, we're watching a system try to revive itself through force. And I'm even reading headlines about bosses not being nice anymore and being less accommodating, treating people like cogs in a machine and letting them know that they are easily replaceable. This leadership has no interest in keeping the best talent or even cultivating that talent, but rather they're fixed on mass production and profits over people. And now with AI in the mix, we understand that they can do jobs that require no emotion, no complaining, no asking for time off or health insurance needed, just tasks being fulfilled. And now they don't have to deal with people. We know too that we're in the largest transfer of wealth and power in history. Now, this is scary for a lot of people. Land, assets, capital, but also knowledge and power are on the table. For them, this isn't about building the future. This is about preserving power. And many of these people that are clinging to this old model, these are folks that should be retired or are nearing retirement. They didn't mentor their successors. They didn't create mobility or offer a real transition. And now they know they're being replaced by innovation and necessity. But what we're really seeing as well is that millennials and Gen Zs are stepping into leadership with a completely different lens. They know the cost of burnout, the burden of student debt, the reality of the technology and the global disruption that that will bring. But what they crave is collaboration. They crave flexibility and freedom and purpose. So now we have 3 to 4 generations in a workforce at the same time, or even in a workplace at the same time, that see the world and work differently. So leadership will not and cannot look the same 5 to 10 years from now. And that's why we're here. Hi, I'm Marjorie. I'm a leadership disruptor, and I'm here to usher in a new model of leadership for the future, one that is based on collective power, a model that's going to honor wisdom and integrity and the courage for us to reimagine a new system. What is emerging right now is not just a generational shift in leadership, it's an energetic one. Leadership is becoming more embodied, more emotionally intelligent, more relational. It's moving out of this rigidity and the control and into harmony and regeneration and co-creation. It's really requiring a diverse collective to usher us into this new world. And I don't just mean here in the United States, but globally, because if we're paying attention, we can see the little speckles of change happening all across the world. And I truly believe that women across generations are the most prepared to lead the shift. This is a calling for us. It's a drumbeat in our hearts. But for many of us, that rhythm, that song that needs to be sang, that message that needs to be told, it wants to move through us, but it's stuck. It's plateaued right here in our throat chakra. And it is stifled by spaces that don't honor our nature. We're navigating courtrooms and classrooms and boardrooms and relationships that is demanding so much of us, demanding for us to perform. And we've been taught to lead like men in order to be taken seriously. And in doing so, we've disconnected from something sacred within ourselves. We've internalized the belief that we must abandon our wildness to be effective, that we can't be divine and powerful, that our feminine instincts are too soft or too messy or just too much. But the truth, some of us are just as afraid of our power as they are. And that fear is costing us. Listen, we know this system that has been in place for years, for centuries, it is falling apart. But when we see things like a room full of older white men discussing and making decisions around a women's health bill, that actually happened in March. Like, come on, talk about out of touch. And now we only have 25% of women holding leadership positions, and 7% will reach an executive level globally. But what is most, I think, disappointing about this is not so much these numbers. It is the assimilation. We fight to get into these rooms and have a seat at the table that was never built for us. And then we give up our power just to stay there. We end up abandoning our voices and our natural rhythm and abandoning our true selves. And then we wonder why we're so burnt out. Why are we walking around numb? Why our cycles and our bodies are out of whack? Why we're exhausted from playing a game where the rules have been rigged. So our leadership becomes like a hunger game. Our lives become a survival game. I want to invite you to remember, not just recall, but remember, to bring your fractured parts back together. Your womb wisdom, your ancestral knowing, your intuitive intelligence, your creative brilliance, your instinct to feel what logic can't explain. This is a homecoming. The wild woman archetype embodies all of that through voice, through body, through rhythm. And this is an invitation of the return to sovereignty, a reclamation, a remembering, a returning to the power that has always lived within you. This is not just a leadership theory. This is not even a leadership theory. This is about leadership reform. It is about dismantling the old paradigm from the inside out. And if anyone is going to do it, it's going to be us. So let's unpack this wild woman leadership archetype that is at the center of my work. Now, the wild woman archetype itself is not mine. It does belong to Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She is the author of the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And she describes the wildest nature of women as an internal watcher, a knower, visionary, oracle, creator, and a guide. It's a part of ourselves that we've lost and forgotten. So I'm here to help you remember and to reclaim what was taken, because we cannot afford for you and me to stay hidden, not when the world is starving for what we have. So whether or not you decide to join us for this leadership portal, the Return to Sovereignty, it's an 8-week experience to reclaim your leadership that will start on June the 10th. I do want you to understand something. We're living in a time where the door is open, the stage is set for the divine masculine and feminine to merge and to lead us into something more whole and humane and healing. We're moving into a future where the collective can no longer wait for saviors to come and fix what's broken because the power is shifting. And it will be women like you who are willing to embody your wildness, shape what comes next. So before we go any further, I just want to ground us for a moment because I just said a mouthful. And I just want you to place your hand on your heart and your other hand on your belly or your womb, wherever you feel your power lives. And I want you to close your eyes if you feel safe and just take a deep breath through your nose. Hold it at the top and let it go through your mouth. Let's do that again. Inhale through your nose. Hold and release, softening those edges. Let this breath be your reminder. You don't need to earn your place here or anywhere. No one needs to name you a leader. You are already leading by choosing to remember. So let's begin. So now that we have rooted ourselves in the why, I want to walk you through the how, the journey that we'll take together inside the Return to Sovereignty. Each week opens a portal. It's a doorway to a deeper part of yourself. And as we move through this journey, you're going to receive insights and practices and activations and rituals, right? And an invitation to embody this work, not just in your leadership, but also in relationships and in your everyday life. But I want you to know you're not going to walk through this alone. You will be paired with one woman to create your circle of truth. And together you will hold space and offer reflection to one another and be accountable to one another. Now, mind you, this is going to be a group of only 6 women. There's only 6 of you that will be going through this journey together. So this will be deeply, deeply intimate. In last month's masterclass, The Leaders We Know Now, I introduced the Great Leadership Pyramid. Now, this is a framework of ascending practices that every leader should embody. But really at the core of this pyramid is something a lot more foundational. It's your values. If you want to know someone's values, don't ask them. Watch them. Watch what they choose. Watch what they protect. Watch what they prioritize. So if I asked you, what would someone see in you? What values would they see if they were watching you, really watching you? Because it's interesting, we all know we have values, but how many of us truly live by them? How many of us let those values guide us in our day-to-day? This is why this work matters, because we cannot create the new from old operating systems. We can't build sustainable leadership on misaligned values and unexamined behavior. For a long time, leadership has been held in a box defined by white men and men in general. But I'm here to take it out of that box. I'm here to create a global movement, not just for women, but I'm starting with us because we're the givers of life. We are the ones that birth things forth into the world. We nurture those things and we heal. So if you're feeling just a little bit of tension with everything that I've shared so far between who you've been and who you want to become, I want you to know that the awakening has already began. It's starting. So I'm going to take you through each week. I'll walk you through what to expect. And at the end of each week, I'm just going to give you an activation or a reflection to sort of help prepare you for our journey together. Okay? So, week one, this is the unraveling, as I call it, the awakening the wild within. This is the moment that we begin to peel back layers of conditioning, titles, expectations, roles we've accepted, and recognize how they've silenced our voice. Our superpower as women is our instinct. So, why have we been taught not to trust it? This week, we're going to draw from The Women Who Run with the Wolves and The Awakened Woman by Dr. Terari Trent. Now, Dr. Trent reminds us that we cannot expect to change what's in the world unless we examine what lies within. Now, this echoes my own beliefs that there is no true social revolution without personal evolution. And to access the wild, we must first get raw and honest and unapologetic and willing to look within. That starts with self reflection. And self reflection is the foundation of the pyramid. Self knowledge grounds us in our authority. And when we take time to reflect, we become more present and more discerning and a lot more intentional about how we lead. So by the end of this first week, you'll uncover the beliefs and the behaviors that you've inherited that were born out of survival. And you'll begin to journey back to your voice. Also, during this first week, we are going to take my Emergent Leaders Archetype quiz. Now, together, we're going to use your core archetype, looking at its strengths and its shadows, as a compass to help to guide you through the following weeks. So here's our first self-reflection or activation or exercise, whatever we want to call it, okay, for this week. I want you to really take the time to stand in front of the mirror. It's a mirror ritual. And to gently name the mask that you've worn in leadership or in life. Now, this is self-inquisitive, right? This is investigative. You want to ask why. Question yourself, why have I been wearing this mask? Is it because it brought me comfort? Does it give me a sense of safety? Was it to fulfill the pleaser that I am? Are you a people pleaser? Really look at that and sit down and journal that that you can go deep and understand where that came from, what that comes from, and you'll be able to identify it moving forward. Then, as we go into week two, the body as oracle. This week, we're going to get out of our heads and into our bodies. We have been trained to lead from intellect, and that's mainly where the masculine leadership comes from. But true leadership flows from our sacral area. Why is it that we've been afraid to trust ourselves, especially in certain settings around men? Now, this can be in business or this can be personal. But something about being in that proximity, it causes our bodies to shut down. And especially if you've been a woman that has been the only woman in the room, you can understand that. You want to match that energy. So a lot of times we do that because we're afraid to get soft and be in our feminine, either out of a fear that, uh, you know, they'll desire us in a sexual nature or will not be taken seriously, which in either case, that's both, right? You're not being taken seriously. And then we're unable to really discern the right choices and decisions to make. We don't listen to our body. So I want us to really explore the messaging that we've inherited about our bodies, about sensuality and desirability, and begin to reclaim our body as a sacred source of knowing and strategy. And listen, no one needs to know you're doing this, right? This is your internal work. So at the end of that week, you won't be afraid to pause and self-reflect and then reconnect with yourself so that you're able to hear a yes or hell yes or a no, hell no. So this too is a part of the next layer of the pyramid, which is self-awareness. We're going to shift from thinking about ourselves to feeling ourselves, feeling it ourselves. I promised myself I was not going to do that, but I couldn't help it. All right. We're going to deepen our embodied awareness, tuning into somatic signals and being able to hear the internal yeses and the nos. So this will be like a sensual self-awareness becomes like a form of body intelligence. So the self-reflective practice for this week is really about, I want you to think about a time when your gut or your instinct saved you from yourself. Meaning that everything logically looked like it was right, was in place, but where in, and you felt something in your knowing, and you look back and you said it really saved you. And I want you to journal that and get familiar with that, what that feeling is. And during this journey together, we're going to do something called a body compass check-in, right? It's a guided somatic practice using breath and sensation to help you distinguish between your true yeses and your conditioned yeses, right? So this is going to be an absolutely beautiful week together. Then we go to week 3, listening to the ancestors. There's a story in the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, of Vasilisa and the Wisdom Doll. It's a gift from her dying mother that helped her navigate the wild unknowns. Now, the doll is a metaphor of the ancestral wisdom within all of us, the wisdom that is left within each of us. And she goes through these forests, right? She enters the forest and it's dark, it's unpredictable, a lot like our lives can be at times. And just like in a Cinderella tale, there are characters along the way who try to harm her and veer her off course. But Vasilisa learns to trust the guidance of the doll. That little symbol of ancestral wisdom helps her navigate the fires and the trials ahead and the people and the characters along the way. And this really got me thinking about my own mother and the wisdom that came from her. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. She was a hairdresser. She was a great cook. She was an amazing baker, and she was entrepreneurial. And she did all of that from the kitchen of our house. And for 7 years when I was married, I too was a stay-at-home mom. And I got a weekly allowance for grocery. And I remember her telling me to set aside $25 of that grocery money and put it in a little bank account for myself. And I told her no, I was not going to do that. I did not want to take food out of the mouths of my family. Years later, as I'm going through a very traumatic divorce, I found myself homeless and locked out of my marital account. Her wisdom came back to me like a tsunami. I only saw my mother with fifth grade education and as a stay-at-home mom and nothing else. But her voice and her lesson and her wisdom really came to me wrapped up in like a practical survival tool that I had dismissed. That's ancestral leadership. It comes through as a familiar voice sometimes, or it can be unrecognized, like an unrecognized whispered warning. And once we learn to listen to it, we honor it by trusting it. That's the invitation this week. To listen for the quiet generational wisdom trying to guide you. So through ancestral connection, we realize our deeper leadership identity as part of our legacy. And that's a self-realization, which is a third tier on the pyramid. This includes recognizing the wisdom that we're carrying forward and embodying who we truly are. So, your reflective prompt for this week is I want you to think about who in your lineage, by blood or spirit, demonstrated a form of leadership that lives in you today. I have stories about my father as well, but I'm going to save that to share during the program. So. So, as we move on to week 4, I want to start with this quote by Muriel Rukeyser. She is a poet and a political activist. And she said, if even one woman told her truth, the world would split open. Well, we're going to do exactly that during this 4th week. Speaking truth as disruption. We're going to confront the silencing of women, and we're going to explore what it means to lose your voice and how to reclaim it through ritual and practice. Dr. Trent, she grew up in Zimbabwe, and she writes about the collective silencing of women, right? And she witnessed this in her village, her grandmother, her mother, and even herself. But it still echoes through in marriages, in our workplaces, in our spiritual communities. So together, we're going to practice using our voice as a sacred instrument of courage and disruption. Leadership becomes a force for liberation when we're able to actualize our inner truth in outer experience. Then self-actualization is the embodiment of that. And that is the 4th tier on the pyramid. When you use your voice and you speak your truth, you are embodying your whole authentic self. It's the moment when inner truth fuels your outer actions, where you can't be contained any longer, when who you are and what you do are no longer at odds. And listen, you don't need anyone applauding you along the way. You don't need validation. You need to be open to experiencing and expressing your truth, even if it ruffles feathers. So are you okay with being a little uncomfortable if it means you're in alignment? Transparency moment here. Do you not think that I did not have my own doubts about some of these articles that I've been writing, calling out mediocre white men that have been leading us, or flipping leadership on its head by calling in the wild in women's leadership? I'm thinking no one's going to take me seriously with this. But here's the thing. I feel in my bones that this is part of my call for leadership reform. So at the end of the day, I don't care who accepts it or who likes it. And if you are here and still listening this far, then that's enough for me. Thank you. So your prompt for this week is, what truths within me have been waiting the longest to be spoken, and what might become possible if I finally gave it voice? This is going to require that you go deep into self-inquiry and to really be honest with yourself about how you are holding back. And now week 4. Woo! Rhythm, ritual, and right timing. This is going to be a magical week. This week, I've invited a special guest and a good friend, and we're going to explore how to sync your leadership with your natural and cosmic cycles. We're going to collect all of your natal information, and during that time, she's going to discuss with you how to use your own personalized evolutionary astrology report and align it to your leadership path with natural and spiritual rhythms. Audrey and I have been working together for several years, and I'm been, the past couple of years, been getting to a place where I'm using her guidance in my life, along with my moon cycle. So this is important to help to ground you in your natural cycle so that you're in alignment with your purpose and your body. And it's truly another source of power that most men will never understand. This connects you with your natural side. So you'll begin to replace urgency with right-timed action because we know real leadership doesn't force, it flows. I'm telling you, the future is a feminine revolution rooted in truth, in cycles, in embodiment, and power. So, this week's reflection is to ask yourself, where in my life can I align my leadership, my creativity, my rest as part of the timing of my own natural rhythm? And that rhythm can be lunar or hormonal, right? And we'll dig more into that when you go through the return to sovereignty. Week 6, creative power and sacred imagination. So this week we're going to draw on the red shoes. Now, this is a tale in The Women Who Runs with the Wolves of a girl who loses her creativity in the pursuit of approval. You'll reclaim that parts of yourself that were pushed aside and be able to dream forward a leadership model that only you can embody. We're going to enter into the realm of myth making. Now, Audre Lorde was the inventor of this form of writing. She did this when she was telling her story in Zami, a new spelling of my name, and she calls this biomyography. Biomyth, I want to say biomythology, but I know that I'm mispronouncing that. But you'll begin to craft your own personal myth, blending, your lived truth with some ancestral memories and your soul's vision for the future. So you get to define yourself on your own terms rather than by some strict historical facts, right? This is really around reframing. And this sort of practice, this has really deep roots with the women in China. They used to script and they called it nushu, or female writing. And because historically they were denied an education for centuries. So women in the southern province of China, they created this and they used script to sort of share their fears and anxiety around arranged marriages. They would script poems and just share with one another, right? And then when they were forbidden to write, they would embroider it in their handkerchiefs. So this was actually called the first language of women's liberation. So we're going to use this matrilineage to inspire you to become the heroine of your own story. So this is the final weeks of really deepening into the top layer of that pyramid and align with self-mastery. Self-mastery is not control over your life, it's an alignment with it. So when you practice self-mastery, you're able to pause instead of reacting, make decisions from an alignment within instead of approval, and you can speak your truth even when your voice shakes. So the prompt for this week is, if there were no rules, no expectations, and no fear, what would you create? Sit down, let your pen just move freely, and write down what comes up for you. And then we move into week 7, holding power without containment. Now, this is where we redefine our relationship with power and boundaries and rebellion. Now, remember what I said earlier, that I believe that we are just as much afraid of our power as they are. Why do you think that is? Because real power comes with responsibility. And most of us have been conditioned to believe that we aren't ready for that. We've been taught to shrink, to question ourselves, to seek validation. So when our full power rises up, it feels unfamiliar, even radical. And let's be honest, many of us have only seen power abused or weaponized. So we fear becoming what we've had to survive. The wild woman archetype, it's about alignment. It's not about domination. It's not about chaos. And it asks us to tell the truth and to take up space and to make bold choices and to be held accountable to our impact. That is a level of sovereignty that can be terrifying if you spent a lifetime being told to defer, to please, to perform. So, yes, some of us are afraid, but not because we're weak. We're afraid because deep down we know that once we claim it, everything must change. So let me ask you, have you fully tapped into your power? This week, we're going to explore sacred rebellion, the kind that just doesn't burn down everything in its wake, right? Just to make noise, right? But disrupt what's false to make space for what's true and real. And we're going to talk about energetic sovereignty, the ability to know where you end and where others begin. And we'll name the difference between rooted power, which is self-sourced, and performative control, which is rooted in fear. And I'll be referencing the book by Dr. David Hawkins on power and force for this particular session. So this is the week where you get to reclaim the right to say no without guilt and to take up space without explanation. Okay? So the reflective prompt for this week is to ask yourself, where in your life have you confused power with control? And what might your leadership look like if it was rooted in truth instead? And then finally, regate, embodied integration and legacy. This is not an ending. It's a return. Remember I said that this journey is a homecoming? And now here we are. We are gathering up the bones like Laluba, the wolf woman. You'll have to listen to my last podcast for that reference and that story that I told about Laluba. But gathering those bones and bringing it home to the body. This final week is about integration. It's about leading from the inside out, from a place of wholeness and courage and devotion. And this week, we're going to share and we're going to celebrate and we're going to create a sacred space together. And you'll be invited to speak about what's shifted for you, what you're releasing, and what you're now claiming as your legacy, and making a personal commitment, not just to yourself, but to all of us witnessed by in this circle. Because legacy isn't about what we leave behind when we're gone. It is about, what we live today and every day. It's the ripple that you create simply by showing up as your whole wild self. So as we close, I want to ask you, how will you honor your own truth? Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not easy. And if you know in your spirit that this is just the beginning, then I want to show you how we can walk this path together. All right. So let me share with you a little bit about what's included inside the Return to Sovereignty and how you can join us for this transformational experience. You're going to be working along with 5 other women in a very sacred space together. This is not a program. This is not a course. This is an experience and a journey, a reclamation of who you were before the world told you who to be, right? And so 8 weeks together, we'll meet weekly for 90 minutes, and you're going to have a workbook, and you're going to be able to have your circle of truth that you can meet with throughout the week. And we're going to grow and move and just, take leadership out of the box together. So if you want to answer this call, I want you to leave a comment below or reach out to me in direct message. We have a few scholarships available. So if you have questions about that, reach out to me and I can tell you how that works. And I look forward to hearing from you. I want to thank you for spending this time with me. And I want to close real quickly with a mantra to send you off with this. So let's just take your hand on your heart and close your eyes and repeat after me. I honor what I've reclaimed. I lead from wholeness, not performance. My voice is sacred. My rhythm is sovereign. I'm the legacy I've been waiting for. Beautiful. Thank you for joining me.